Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to month 2 of our level up training. I'm excited to get going today. We'll give a few minutes for folks to get um, joined here. I know looks like we got about 20 people already, and we've got plenty trickling in. If you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to jump in the chat, and I have an icebreaker question for us today. It's back to school season. We've got 2 little ones in our house. We had a kindergartner start last week, and then we've got a second grader, which is just wild. So it's got me thinking about school and favorite teachers and all that sort of stuff. Right now, every teacher is our kid's favorite teacher, which is a fun stage to be at. Think back to your school days and jump in the chat and let me know what was the name of your favorite teacher and what was their subject. And if there's anything special, like why they were your favorite, feel free to share that too. And I'll watch the chat come in here. Joan, Mrs. McCormick, social studies in 6th grade. I had a good social studies experience in 6th grade too. I remember it was like mixed with history and stuff. We built this giant like ancient Egypt model thing. That was cool. Mr. Meisner, basketball coach, music choir teacher. Love it. Basketball coach and music choir teacher. That's cool. That's a fun combo. Mr. I'm gonna mispronounce it. Magtutu, physics. Awesome. I got to skip physics. I helped my older brother with his with like final physics project. I was like, that's enough for me. Took the other classes around it and got through. High school band teacher. Yes, I was also a band kid. My favorite teacher was Mr. Hornsby, Bob Hornsby. He was our drumline instructor and a social studies teacher, and was
That's like a classic teacher name.
it really is. It really is. We've got, oh man, there's lots coming in. Mr. Rowe, economics in college. Oh, nice. Liked him so much. I signed up for multiple econ classes. That's bold. Nice, Shauna. Mrs. Ranger, 5th grade teacher, absolutely amazing. So supportive. Transferred to her class in the middle of the year because I was struggling. Mrs. Ranger gave me the space to grow and be myself. That's the best. Those are the best teachers. I love that for you, Abby. What a cool experience. What a good thing. Favorite high school teacher, Mr. Blinko, 10th grade biology. Oh, high school biology. That's bringing back both some good and some very anxiety-inducing memories. Love it. Well, feel free to keep sharing those in the chat. That's really fun to see. Always a fun time when your new school year starts. Lots of excitement around that. We've got a few housekeeping items to cover. Actually, just really one thing today. And I just want to cover what you should expect from today's session. We're talking all about value proposition today. We're going to look at it in a bunch of different ways. In fact, in a moment here, we'll look at a few different examples of not just like a donation page or an appeal, but also an email and some things on your homepage, because value proposition is at work anytime someone is making a decision. Hopefully, if the data session from last month was a little tricky for you, this feels a little bit more like right in line with what your typical day-to-day is, and maybe as a breath of fresh air if you struggled like working through Google Analytics and all that sort of stuff. But 3 main kind of expectations today. Number 1, my hope for you by the end of our time is that you would understand what we believe is the fundamental value proposition question that, again, is at work anytime that someone is making a decision. So we'll review that question and break it down into its pieces and look at why it's important and how it can drive our copy as we consider how we write stronger appeals. Number 2 is that we're going to look at 4 key elements of an effective value proposition. And my hope for you is that you have those committed to memory by the end of today's session, and know how to use them in order to come up with new ideas that you can test inside of your copy, whether it's on a donation page or it's in an email or it's in a direct mail appeal or wherever you are working on a donation appeal. And then finally, number 3, I want to give you a very simple sort of scoring approach for value proposition. So you can look at any given page, any given appeal, and sort of instantly score it, rank it, not for the sake of applying a score and saying this one is better than that one, But for the sake of coming up with those new test ideas, those new things that you could try, test, implement, or change in order to try and drive better results from your copy. So those are the three main things that we are going to work on. And then ultimately our homework at the very end is going to be actually applying some of these takeaways specifically to your Colorado Gives organization page. That's going to be our starting place. And then we can look at, applying it in a lot of other cases as well. But that's going to ultimately be our homework, is taking some of this stuff and applying it to that Colorado Gives organization page. Are we ready to go? Should we dive in? I see a lot of faces. You can give me a thumbs up. You ready to go? Okay, cool. Let's do it. Let's go. One more teacher shout out. We got one from the one on my screen is from Jess Murphy. Favorite high school teacher was my math teacher. Always told us you can never stop learning. And that's what always stuck with me. I am always willing to learn something new because of that. I love it. What a great life lesson that just is going to set you up for success. Probably more so than maybe the day-to-day math work that you were doing. Cool. Okay. I'm going to show you a couple of different experiments. These are A/B tests. And just as a reminder, if that's kind of a newer skill set for you or terminology for you, we're basically saying in the same time frame, we're going to test two different approaches. So we're going to split our traffic in half. Half of the traffic is going to see version A of the copy or the design. Half the traffic is going to see version B of the copy or design. And we're going to see which is the better performer. So first, we're going to look at a homepage ad. And I want you to get your fingers on the keyboard in your chat and be ready, because I'm going to ask you to vote for which one you think is going to have a better result. So get ready. Here's a homepage ad for you. Version A looks like this. Version B looks like this. This is the homepage of an organization during the year-end season. I'll read a little bit for you. It says, you can change a life with a gift. This Christmas, give a gift that can meet a critical need of a child or family living in poverty. Change life by giving a gift. Version B leans into the branding of the campaign. So a little bit more design focused, looks really clean, looks really nice. It says, this Christmas, change a life, shop now. And we got votes rolling in. And it's funny, I show version A and everyone starts putting A in, and now I put version B up and everybody starts putting B in, and now we've got sort of a split decision here. I'm not going to show you the answer quite yet. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. So I want you to just keep it in mind and remember which one you voted for. Okay, let's look at an email. The email looks like this. I've got a version A and a version B for you. I'm not going to read all the copy. Again, we will come back to it. We'll actually dive into this one a little bit deeper later on. But you've got this more succinct, although for some of you, this may not look like a succinct email, but wait till you see the treatment. This is the succinct version, a few paragraphs, a few different links in there. Version B is a little bit more lengthy. Which one of these email appeals do you think is going to lead to more people giving? Feel free to drop your answer in the chat. And it looks like so far we're 100% version A. Do we have any brave souls? Oh, I saw one fly by that voted for B. I think Sarah, Joel, Carrie. Okay, we've got some brave people voting for B. I like it. Again, keep these in mind. Keep your votes in mind. We'll come back to it. Let's look at one more. This is a donation page, and they look very different in terms of the copy on the page. Version A looks like this. It says, Illinois' comeback story starts here. Together, we're writing the next chapter of Illinois' comeback story. Version B is the same page in terms of the layout and design, but it has a lot more copy on the page. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, if you want to count the one line, 6 paragraphs of copy explaining why someone should give. Keep in mind that this does push the form pretty far down the page. It's out of sort of the, it's no longer above the fold, which is a typical best practice, but it does have a lot more copy. And we are talking about value proposition today, just to give you some hints. It looks like we've got some A's, we got a lot of B's, maybe a little bit of a split vote here too. All right, keep those in mind. I'm not going to show you the results yet. I want to talk about a couple things before we go look at the winners. So keep those in mind. What's really the difference? What's really going on in all of these Again, we are talking about value proposition, how to communicate that in an effective way. But I want to bring us back to something we looked at in our initial orientation session. And we'll probably look at this a handful of times over the coming months together, because it's a good analogy for us to lean back into when we think about the donor experience and the donor journey. When you look at a donation page, again, we looked at this in our orientation session. What we find when we look at a main donation page is the average conversion rate is 13.5%. That means that if you have 100 people that show up on your donation page, 13 and a half of them, I don't know how you make half a donation, but 13 and a half of them are going to give. And when we look at our giving experience, our donor journey through the lens of a funnel, which is a very typical sort of approach to any sort of e-commerce or donations, how do you sell something online? It's a very helpful analogy to look at the flow and the order of operations. How does someone get from point A to point B and ultimately give? We want to build a clear funnel. And so it may look like this, where someone visits your homepage, and they click the donate button that hopefully is in the navigation in a clear way. Then they have to choose to read all the way to the form on the donation page once they get there. And then they have to actually decide that they want to give to you. And then they'll start filling out the donation form, and then they'll complete the donation. And again, if we have a 13.5% conversion rate, then we have a clear funnel. People coming in the top, we know 13.5% are going to actually convert and give. And so, the natural way to grow is to get more people in the top. However, this also implies that we have an 86.5% failure rate. And so while there's a common, I think there's a common misconception that when people click the donate button or a donate link and they come to the page, oftentimes we can assume that they're ready to give. They already hit the button and said, yes, I'm ready to give. I want to donate. But the reality is, when we look at our metrics, it tells a completely different story, which is that we're failing most of the people that come to our donation pages, and they're clearly not all ready and fully motivated to give. There could be a variety of reasons that are stopping people from giving. One of the primary ones that we found over 7,200 online fundraising experiments is that the value proposition copy is not strong enough to motivate them to say yes at every single step. Jordan and I were just talking about coffee before everybody jumped on. And so it's funny, I have a coffee analogy in here. When I look at a funnel, I think about how I make a cup of coffee every morning because I'm a bit of a snob and I'm making a little pour over. And you need a critical element to pull the water down through the grounds in the funnel to make the cup of coffee. And that element is gravity. But in the case of our donation funnel, there is no sort of natural force like gravity that is pulling people towards the ultimate decision of giving. In fact, it's probably the opposite, where it's a lot of hard work for someone to say yes at every single step in order to actually part with their hard-earned money and give it to you and trust you to go do something meaningful with it. That's not a natural behavior. It's really hard to do. And so when we think about the funnel, we actually like to go flip it upside down, because I think it's a more accurate picture of the work that a donor has to put in to actually make a gift. And when you flip it upside down, when people are now climbing your funnel, they're not just falling down and they have to put a lot of work in. It feels a bit more like climbing a mountain. So this is sort of our primary analogy as we think about the donation experience. Your donor starts at the bottom, and our goal is to get them to the top where they're actually going to give. And on their ascent up the mountain, they have a lot of opportunities to turn back. Just did a big hike over the weekend with my brother-in-law, and boy, by the time we got to the top, there were many times we wanted to turn back. And your donors have the same sort of situation, where even if you send them an email, their first decision, again, is not to give. It's, should I even open the email and give you the time of day? And we have to get them to say yes at this point. We have to communicate a strong enough value proposition, even in our subject line and in the sender, the subject line, the preview text of our email, to get them to say yes to giving you the time of day and considering what you have to say. And then we have to get them to read through the copy, and it has to be strong enough, motivating enough to get them to say yes to choosing to click through, and then to coming to the donation page and reading the copy and then choosing to donate, all those different decisions. And at every single point, they have an opportunity to say no and to turn back and head back down the mountain. It's a lot easier to go back down the mountain than it is to keep on climbing and keep on going. And again, we talked about this in our orientation session, but where I really want to zero in today is this. When someone is making any of these decisions, and these are micro decisions, they may not even be aware that these are decisions they're making in their brain while they're on this journey. But at every single step, if we want them to say yes, we have to consider two factors. One is, what is the cost of saying yes and proceeding down up the mountain or down this journey of giving? And then secondly, what is the value of saying yes? And we have to make sure the value outweighs the cost. What do I mean by cost? Because I don't just mean a dollar amount. What I mean by cost is things like friction on the page, or friction maybe in the email, not having enough understanding about why I should move forward. Those are all mental costs. Having anxiety about the security of the page. If I come to your donation form and there's a lot of confusion about what to do because the elements are kind of in a strange order, or the copy is hard to understand, maybe there's errors on the page, all those things drive up cost. But it also can be things like, maybe I just don't trust you. and I don't trust that you're going to do something meaningful with the money that you want me to give to you. That can be a cost factor as well. So there's all these cost factors that we want to aim to reduce as much as we can. And at the same time, we want to increase the strength of the value that we're communicating about why someone should give. Ultimately, that's really, what is the impact that someone can make? What's the meaningful impact that your ideal donor can make? The more we can strengthen the value and decrease the cost, the more likely people are to say yes at every single step. It's very high level, kind of up in the sky, theoretical, but I think it's a helpful sort of analogy as we dive into some of the details, which I'm ready to do. Would you like to see the results of these tests that you've been waiting on the past few minutes? I see some head nods. Let's look at it. And Sarah says yes, all caps in the chat. Let's go. Okay, here we go. This was our homepage ad. We've got version A versus version B. If you said version B, well, you'd be incorrect. In fact, version A was the winner here. Version A led to a 35% increase in donations over version B, the more like branded look and feel. And the reason is probably clear to you. We're all savvy marketers and fundraisers here. And you go look at the copy here, and especially knowing the result now, you can see how much more clarity is presented on the page about what they're actually asking you to do. Version B says, this Christmas, change life, shop now. It's got a picture of a person holding a goat. Now, unless you have all of the context because you've been donating to this organization and participating with them in their work over the past few years, you probably don't really know what it means to go shop now. How does me shopping go change a life? There's not a lot of clarity there to connect those two pieces. And so I might be very confused, especially if I'm a new or newer donor. Where version A spells out in great clarity, just in about 2 sentences and a headline, of what they're actually asking you to do, what the impact is. This Christmas, give a gift that can meet a critical need of a child or family. When a family receives a goat, education, water, or some other tangible solution, their lives are changed for years to come. Change a life by giving a gift. The value proposition is significantly stronger in version A, which is why we see that significant uptick in performance and donations. So if you said version A, congratulations. If you said version B, you're probably going to get another one of these right. This is a toss-up. When we work just from our gut feeling, we're going to get it wrong half the time, which is why we have to put things to the test. Here's our email. Again, our quote-unquote succinct email versus our more long-form email. This is a fun one. And I'm not here to say that this test is not about long form versus short form copy. We could talk about that for hours. We'll unpack this email in greater depth a little bit later on. So we'll hold on to it here, but I will show you the result. What we saw was that version B, this longer form email appeal, actually led to a 42% increase in donations. It has everything to do with the strength of the value proposition, particularly an element that we're going to talk about, which is credibility and trust, because version B uses some elements inside of the copy to significantly boost the trust that the donor would have as they're seeing this appeal directly in their inbox. Value proposition is at work. And then our donation page. We had a bit of a split decision here. Again, there's no one donation page format template to rule them all. There are some critical things that we will certainly unpack in a session on donation page optimization about layout and copy and design and all that sort of stuff. When it comes to copy, there can be significant variance in terms of like the length of copy on a page and what's most effective. But at the end of the day, what we see consistently over and over and over again is that most organizations do not have enough copy on their donation pages to fully articulate why someone should give. And so in this case, by adding significant value proposition copy to the page, they saw a 150% increase in donations. Because now when someone comes to this page, they can clearly see what the problem is that needs to be solved, what the solution is, how they can impact that solution with their gift, why they need a gift now rather than later. And it led to this significant increase in donations and donor conversions. So let's dive into some of the details, because again, these things are not just random. We're not just throwing copy up at the wall and trying to see what sticks. There is sort of a formula that we can use and a framework that we can apply to systematically develop stronger value proposition copy. I'll pause for a moment before we dive in. Any thoughts, any questions before we dive into sort of the details and the nuance of what is a value proposition? I see a question from Carrie. Did you tell us how many emails that went out? I assume that's in relation to that experiment we just looked at. That was truly just a one-to-one experiment and test. So just one email, half the email file got version A, half the email file got version B on the same day at the same time. Casey says, is there a length of diminishing returns? How long is too long of copy? And again, there's so much variance there. One of our earliest experiments was basically a kind of shopping cart style donation page that had a couple lines of copy and some little descriptors on the different giving levels. Version B was like 2,600 characters on the page and is the longest donation form I've ever seen in my entire life. And it just absolutely whomped version A. It was like a multiple 100% increase in donations. And in that specific case, it was with an organization called the Texas State Historical Association. And everybody who gives to that organization is a history buff and they're willing to read. And so they leaned into that on the page. So if you took a 2,600 character page and you put it on your website, it might not be as effective as it was for the Texas State Historical Association. So context matters a lot there. There's not a rule about it must be this or it can't be any more than that or any less than this. It's really contextual. And we're going to unpack kind of how to assess how much more copy you need as we sort of go through this framework. Let's take one more question, then we'll jump in. Well, Carrie says, but to 1,000 people. I don't remember the exact volume on that email test. It's with an organization called Caring Bridge. I know their email file is significantly larger than 1,000 people. It's multiple hundreds of thousands. And so, yeah, the sample size is very significant on that experiment. I love this question from Kim. I've been told longer copy doesn't get read. Today's generation does not take time to read. That is honestly, it's the most nonsensical idea that I think quote unquote experts continue to share, is that people don't read online. And it's nonsense, because the people that you want to give to you are willing to read what you have to say. People don't read online, when they're scrolling through a Facebook feed or something like that, and they're just trying to get to, something interesting, and they're doom scrolling. Maybe they're not reading significant copy until they see something of significant value. And so that's the key, is understanding who your audience is, who your ideal donor is, and communicating copy that's going to tap into something that they care about, and then they'll read. So it drives me nuts when I see that idea is just continuing to be perpetuated, that people don't read online, because we see the exact opposite in almost every single experiment that we run. Okay, we'll come back. We'll have more time for questions. Let's talk about what actually is a value proposition. And in fact, the first thing I want to do is define what's not a value proposition, because I think the most default position to take when we think about copy and value is to say, well, we have a mission statement. Here's a mission statement. This is from Sierra Club. I don't know if it's their most recent, but certainly within the past year or two, this was their mission statement. It says, to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet, to practice and promote the responsible use of the Earth's ecosystems and resources, to educate and enlist humanity to protect and restore the quality of the natural and human environment, and to use all lawful means to carry out those objectives. The reason this is not a value proposition is because you can't add the call to action at the bottom, donate now. Like this is not at all about the donor. This is a really important statement for this organization. You have your own mission statement that is really important for your organization and is sort of going to be the North Star, the guiding light around decisions that you're going to make as an organization in terms of figuring out what's the type of impact that we want to make. Should we do this thing or that thing? Should we invest our money over here or over there? How are we going to drive things forward and actually continue to solve the problem that we exist to solve? It's going to shape and form almost every decision that you make, or at least a good mission statement should. But you can't copy and paste this onto your donation page or into an email and expect that people are going to be motivated by it to give. It's not framed in the mindset of your donor. We'll unpack more of what that looks like as we go. A value proposition is also not an incentive. This is a screenshot of the donation page for, at least it used to be the donation page. It's improved quite a lot since then, but of KERA, which is a PBS and public media station in the Dallas area. And when you look at this page, there's very little copy about why you should give. The whole page is about the things that you can get when you give. And if the whole reason to give is just to go get something, I immediately shift to a totally different mindset. I'm just about the transaction. What can I get when I give you money? And shoot, when I go look at this, I can get a travel thermos for a lot cheaper than a $10 a month recurring subscription. I can go get a t-shirt with a Texas flag on it for a lot cheaper than $7.50 a month. So why would I give you my money here to go get one of these things that I could go, pick up at a store for much cheaper and not sign up for a subscription model to get an umbrella? So incentives are not a value proposition. They don't communicate any of the why around why someone should actually give. They can be impactful and effective to help someone choose to give now rather than later, or maybe to give more rather than less, but they're not the core reason to give. Here's how we like to define the value proposition, and I hope that you commit this to memory as we go. If I am your ideal donor, why should I give to you rather than to some other organization or even at all? We have to answer this question on the page. We have to answer this question in our emails. We have to answer this question every time we're communicating about someone giving. Honestly, just even as you think about your brand as a whole should be fostering the conclusion that someone should give as a result of the answer to this question. I'm going to repeat it one more time because I do think it's really important. If I am your ideal donor, why should I give to you rather than to some other organization or even at all? And I'm going to ask us to pause for a moment. I want you to take right now, I'm going to start a timer, 60 seconds. We don't need to take a ton of time. Take 60 seconds and jot down 1 to 2 sentences maximum answering this question, just kind of off the top of your head. You don't need to go pull other stuff up, but how would you answer this question in 1 to 2 sentences for your organization? Feel free to drop it in the chat if you'd like to share it, but definitely make sure that you write it down here in the next minute. So I'm going to start the timer here now. I want you to answer this question. Go for it. As you jot down your thoughts, I'm going to read it out loud again so you can hear the different pieces. They're all important. If I am your ideal supporter, keyword ideal, why should I donate to you rather than to another organization or even give at all? Because I don't have to give. No one's forcing me to give. Gather your thoughts, jot them down. Feel free to share in the chat if you'd like. It'd be fun to see some of your answers. Got about 10 seconds. I know it's not a lot of time. You can keep working on it in the background as we move forward as well. And there is our time. Again, keep working if you'd like to, as you're kind of gathering your thoughts and doing some wordsmithing and all that sort of stuff. We'll see. We'll read. We'll say three of these. I see three right now. We'll read three and then we'll move on. Caitlin says, donate to us in order to help keep poop and pee off of our streets. Wow, it's motivating. There's a clear need. We give people a place to do their business, which improves the health of our community, environment, and community members. Love it. Carrie says, we expect and track outcomes for our neurodiverse clients. Each activity is not just to keep them busy. Thank you. And then one from Jennifer. Without the work done by Western States Cancer Research and your funding, there will be no cure for cancer. It's a powerful, powerful statement. Awesome. And I see many others coming in. I want you to feel free to continue to drop them in the chat. We may come back and read a couple of these later on too, because as we go through, we're going to break down the question. We're going to look at the four different kind of key elements. I want you to have your answer here in mind, what you jotted down in mind, and think about how might I improve it, strengthen it, optimize it based on the different elements that we're about to unpack. So keep it in front of you as we go. Let's jump in. Let's break down the question. The very first part, the very first two words are critical. If I, this is really the subject of the sentence, the person that's in focus. It is not you. It is not the organization. It is not the fundraiser. It is not the marketer. It is the donor. We have to be able to answer this question in the mind of the donor. And so, something to keep in mind that I think is really important and easy for anyone who's writing copy in any scenario to forget is that the person on the other end does not have all the context that you have. As many donors, maybe they've been giving to you for years and years, they still don't know all the nitty gritty detail and nuance that you do because you live in your organization every single day. You are as close to the cause as you can really possibly be because you're seeing it at work, especially if you're on the program side too, and you're wearing multiple hats. You see everything every day and your donors don't. We have to be able to answer this question in a way that they're going to understand and perceive. We have to avoid jargon. We have to use vocabulary that they're going to understand. And ultimately, we have to frame the copy so they can see themselves making an impact. Those first two words are really critical. It frames the whole thing in a mindset that's going to set the stage for the rest of it. So that's kind of part one here. The next critical piece of this is this, why should I part of it. The last kind of sentence that's on your screen, it's the answer to a why question. I think that's a really important thing. It's a why question. It's not a what question. It's not a when. It's not a how. You can spend all day and all the time that you want talking about the various programs that you have, where exactly the money is going to go. If you give $50, it's going to go do this very specific thing, or, you know, we're going to use it in this way. You might talk about a specific campaign or initiative that you have going on. But that doesn't answer the why. Those are all what, when, how types of questions. Ultimately, we have to get back to the ultimate reason that someone should give. And that really has to do with what's the core problem that your organization is trying to solve? What's the solution that you're implementing to solve the problem? What's the impact that that donor can make? My friend Patrick, who's our marketing director, he just posted something on LinkedIn the other day that was thought-provoking for me, where he was talking about getting to the benefit beyond the benefit. Not just the thing that you buy, but what's the reason you buy it? What's the real life change that's happening when you purchase a product or something like that? In our case, you know, what's the real reason that you would, I think about, let's go back to that example of the homepage ad, when you're giving a goat or something like that. You know, the reason to give is not just because there's a goat that they would like to have. Like, that's a very tangible thing that you can provide to someone. We're talking about international relief type of work. It's a very tangible thing, but it's not the why. The why you would give it is because it can actually, you know, go create a sustainable, you know, income, lifestyle, economy for not just this person, but their family and even surrounding communities. And that's the ultimate why, is the sustainability and the relief that you might be able to provide through the tangible thing, the sense of self-worth that comes with that, the sense of dignity and status in a society and community. Those are all like the ultimate outcomes that are being achieved. It's not about the specific thing. So we have to get to the ultimate why, not just the what, the when, or the how. Okay, number three. Why should I donate to you rather than another organization? I love to zero in on this one. When you think about, more like a for-profit business, obviously for-profit businesses are talking about competition and competitors all the time. In our space as nonprofits, we rarely think about that, or we rarely use the term competitors. We don't necessarily think about each other, even if we're doing similar work, we don't necessarily think about each other as competitors, because we're all trying to do meaningful things. And oftentimes we're working together to do them as well. But what we have to understand is that donors always have choice and they always have options. And especially if you're doing work that's similar to other types of organizations, we have to lean into what I would call differentiation, making sure that people understand your unique approach as compared to some other organization. There's a lot of reasons to lean into that, even just for the sake of clarity about where a gift is going and what it's going to do. But we have to be able to differentiate ourselves from other organizations so that donors understand exactly where their money is going, what it's going to do, and it also builds trust because they have deeper clarity. So we have to lean into differentiation. The last piece of the puzzle of this question here is this or at all piece. Donors don't have to give. No one is forcing them to give. And so in our copy, we have to actually inspire an action that's kind of just above the status quo. Why should I part with my hard-earned money and give it to you? I don't have to. Just because you're doing good work doesn't mean that I have to support it. I'm not forced to go give my money to some organization right now. Why should I give it to you? So in all of our copy, we have to inspire someone kind of against those distractions of life and sort of the status quo so that they're willing to choose to part with their money. The last thing I'll share here as well is just this important note that value proposition is at play all the time in every single decision, whether they're on the donation page or they're in an email or they're on your homepage thinking about, should I sign up for your newsletter? Anytime someone is making a decision about anything, value proposition is at play. And you can go modify this question. If I'm your ideal subscriber, why should I sign up for your newsletter rather than just abandon the page or not sign up at all? You can apply this to every single decision, and it helps frame and shape the copy that you might write. Okay, let's look at our 4 key elements. We've broken down the question. I want to give you these 4 key elements, and I'm conscious of time. We'll kind of keep moving here, and then we'll put some of this into practice as well. The first key element of an effective value proposition, you might want to write these down. Number 1 is the appeal. Appeal answers the question of how badly do I want it? Who is I? Does anyone remember from what we just said? Who's the I in this question? Drop it in the chat. Is it you? Is it the fundraiser? Is it a marketer? Or is it the donor? Oh yeah, Tara wins. She got to it first, but y'all got the answer. Donor, 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 donor. The I is always the donor. How badly does the donor want to make the type of impact that you're communicating in your copy? Let's look at an experiment example. I love this experiment. I go back to it all the time, but I think it's a fantastic one. We're going to look at several different CaringBridge experiments because I think it's a helpful kind of a way to just look at one organization and how they're framing value proposition in different ways. A little context, if you're not familiar with CaringBridge, essentially what they do is they provide individual like health journal pages. If you're going through a health crisis or something like that, and there's a long recovery time, you got surgery coming up, things like that, it's really hard to go just text all your family and friends and keep people up to date. And so these journal pages help people be able to post updates, things that's going on, friends, family, loved ones. They can send messages and notes and leave comments and send you encouragement through the journey that you're on. And so that's primarily what they do. So on one of these journal pages, you would have this little banner, this little widget, this call out that says honor, and it inserts the name of the person on the journal page. But in this case, honor Caden Callan with a donation to CaringBridge. You make Caden Callan's website possible. That's version A. They tried a few things. Number 1, they basically flipped the order of the copy. They're saying Cade's CaringBridge site is supported by generous donors like you. Make a donation to CaringBridge in honor of Cade. All the same elements are there. They're just sort of reversing and changing the order a little bit, trying to see, does this help people say yes more so than the control? Treatment 2, they focused the copy more specifically on the impact of the site. They said, help Cade stay connected to family and friends, make a donation to Caring Bridge to keep Cade's site up and running. So making this connection of the outcome of connecting to family and friends with the specific tactic of keeping the site up and running when you make a donation. Treatment 3 is a little bit different. They leaned a bit more into an emotional appeal. They're saying, don't just help Cade, but actually show your love and support for Cade. Make a donation to Caring Bridge to keep Cade's site up and running. So you have the tangible impact, which is the site that's up and running still, and the ultimate why, which is the showing your love and support for this person who's going through a health crisis and a health journey. They ran this experiment, this 4-way experiment. What they found was that treatment 1 led to a marginal increase in donations, but not at a what we'd call statistically significant level. So effectively no real change. Same thing here, a small uptick in donations, but not statistically confident, so effectively no significant change. But the emotional appeal that gets around to that sort of core why question, like we talked about, led to a 67% increase in donations. What's fascinating to me about all of these is that there was actually no difference in clicks on the donate button. And so the copy that we communicated lower in the funnel or lower down on the mountain, if you will, impacted their behavior later on because it changed the motivation when they actually got to the next step. So again, value proposition is at play at every single decision, and how you communicate it down here at the bottom of the mountain is going to impact how they make their decision all the way at the top. So we have to test our way to what is the right appeal messaging. Number 2, exclusivity. Exclusivity has everything to do with differentiation, like we talked about. Can I, the ideal donor, make this type of impact somewhere or anywhere else? If I can give hope anywhere else, why do I need to give it right now through your organization? We have to use messaging that clearly shows the impact, where a gift is going, and how your approach is unique or different. I like this example, again, another Caring Bridge one in one of their sort of tribute widget donation options. This is run during the year-end season, so relevant for us as we're getting closer, inching closer to Colorado Gives Day season and then ultimately year-end. Version A says, make a wonderful tribute donation. How many of you could put the headline, make a wonderful tribute donation on your site somewhere? Probably most everybody could use that same language. We might call that invisible language because it doesn't really mean anything. Anyone can go copy and paste it into their own site, and it would make sense as much as it makes sense in the first place. Make a wonderful tribute donation. Honor Deborah with a tribute donation and help Caring Bridge connect people with love and support. Version B leads in the headline with honor Deborah with your tribute donation. I've been on Deborah's page. Why don't we lean into that specifically? No one else, at no other organization can I specifically honor Deborah in this context with a tribute donation. That is an element of exclusivity and a key differentiator here. It's not a generic gift. It's a gift to honor Deborah specifically, and they lead with that in the headline. And then down below, in version A, it talks about connecting people with love and support. Version B gets a lot more specific. A lot of organizations can connect people with love and support, whether it's Caring Bridge or it's a food pantry or a shelter or things like that. You're connecting people with the support they need. Version B says, make a gift to Caring Bridge in honor of Deborah to make sure that the website that brings them joy on a daily basis stays up and running this holiday season. That's very specific to this organization. It's very specific to this context. It's not vague and general. You couldn't go copy and paste this onto your own website or into your own giving widget. It's very unique. It's different. It's exclusive. That approach led to an 86% increase in people actually starting the donation process here and ultimately completing it on the follow-up donation page. Exclusivity is critical in its key. Element number three. So we've talked about appeal. We've talked about exclusivity. Now I want to talk about clarity. And I think clarity in your copy is a pretty easy concept to understand. Harder to implement, but easy to understand. But clarity asks this question of how quickly, how easily do I understand what you're communicating? We want to make sure we avoid jargon. We want to make sure we're not using insider terms and vocabulary that our donors might not understand. But we also want to consider how might design and layout and the order of the elements on a page or in an appeal impact clarity. I love this experiment because it shows exactly that. This is sort of the mobile view of what used to be their homepage. And between you and me, it feels a little chaotic. There's a lot going on. There's multiple calls to action. You got a search bar with a start a site button that's the same sort of color and treatment as this text block background below it. Obviously, you've got the menu and sign-ins and lots of things happening in the control. What they tested was, what if we really clarified the design to zero in on the primary call to action? And then they've used the design to also provide that secondary call to action, but it's kind of clear the priority based on even the coloring. Personal protected sites for every health journey, free personal site to share health updates and rally support, and then you can create a site, or you can find someone's site. Much more, clarity in the design of the page. And yes, some of the copy is changing too. They also wondered, okay, in this same sort of new design universe, what if we added some of the old copy back in and added more of that detail? And so they're trying to figure out which of these is really going to stick and be the clearest to get someone to say yes to the next step, which is to create a site. What they found was this more like text heavy version led to a marginal increase in people starting to create a site. Version B here, the more limited copy with the clarified design, led to a 31% increase in people saying yes to the call to action. So yes, we need clear copy. We also need to make sure our design is not distracting, but it's actually leading people down a logical sort of hierarchy of decisions to the ultimate call to action. So clarity is key. Number 4, and our last key element here is credibility. Do I believe what you're claiming is true? Do I, your ideal donor, actually believe you? Do I actually trust you? Now, I'm going to assume that everything that you're going to put in an appeal or on a donation page is true, but that doesn't mean the donor has full trust in it. There's lots of things that you can do to try to boost trust and increase credibility. Sometimes it looks like adding a quick testimonial. That can also look like you may be adding a review or something like that. It quotes from a donor or someone who's been impacted. It might also look like adding those sort of third-party credibility seals, like a Candid or GuideStar seal or a Charity Navigator seal. Those little things can add up to boost credibility, even in small ways. But it also might come down to just the way that you frame your copy and using story and using narrative. And so I want to come back to this experiment. We looked at a couple of times. We saw that the long version was the winner, but let's look a little bit deeper at some of the copy. Version A, this is really the primary sort of thrust of the value proposition of the appeal. It says, CaringBridge is free to use. It's not free to run. We have a team of developers, quality assurance techs, business analysts, and coordinators who make sure anyone in need can create new, free sites while maintaining the hundreds of thousands of existing sites for as long as they are needed. The need for connection and coordination through CaringBridge has only grown over the last few years. This same exact paragraph, if you just move to the right side of your screen, is right there in version B. The same first 2 paragraphs are in both of these emails. They both lead in the same way. But then there's a significant change where version A moves directly then into the call to action with some incentives. You can double your gift. There's a matching opportunity. Version B tells a pretty lengthy story, giving a very clear example of someone who has interacted with CaringBridge and seen tremendous benefit from it. I won't read all the copy, but a few things to highlight. They lead with, let me tell you what your gift is going to do. Courtney, who's a user of our site, she was a nurse when she was diagnosed with breast cancer at 37. She was worried about her future, and her family stepped up to take care of her needs in the present. She says that I knew my kids were always somewhere safe with someone who loved them, and that took such a load off of my mind. And she knows them, and that because it's being posted in her CaringBridge journal. Down below, she decided to face her health journey with optimism. She shared that attitude with everyone who read her CaringBridge journal. And down towards the bottom, if I had let all this weigh me down, I may not have had the same outcome. I tend to think that people who don't have support or the ability to stay positive and remain hopeful have a harder time making it through. So they tell this lengthy story, this lengthy narrative, but it puts you in the shoes of someone that's really in need and going through a health journey and a health crisis, and seeing how just by having this one pretty simple tool, It's providing not just updates about the journey that she's on, but it's providing the deeper why. It's the encouragement. It's the life that's being given to her from the encouragement of her family and friends and loved ones via the Caring Bridge Journal site. And then they move into the call to action. This exists purely to increase credibility and trust. I can tell you what your gift is going to do in the very tangible, here's our different programs, or I can show you by helping put you in the shoes of someone who has the lived experience. And that is dramatically increasing trust, credibility, and led to a 42% increase in donations. So credibility is critical. Lots of ways that you can try to boost it, but it is a critical thing that we have to lean into to build trust with our donors. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to jump into how do you start to score your value proposition? So we looked at the question, if I'm your ideal donor, why should I give to you? We looked at the 4 key elements. Does anyone remember what they are? Drop them in the chat. Let me know. What's the first one? Anybody?
Appeal.
Here we go. Someone shouted it out. It's in the chat. We've got appeal. What's the second one that we looked at?
Exclusivity.
Exclusivity. Yes. Okay. 3. Clarity. I see it coming in. And then 4th, what we just looked at is credibility. There we go. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Carrie, Lenny. Awesome. Okay, we've got our 4 elements down. You are masters of those 4 key elements. Let's look at scoring your value proposition. One very simple way to do it. I'm going to give you a bit more complicated way to do it with some like kind of a rubric that'll be part of your homework. But one simple way is to play red light, green light, basically. Appeal. How badly does your ideal donor want it? Do they have no interest? That's a red light. Do they have maybe a little bit of interest? Okay, yellow light. Or if it's absolutely right on the mark, nailing the target of your ideal donor, what they want to see solved in the world, right in line with their values and interests, that's a green light. Exclusivity. Where else can I get this? If I can make this impact anywhere else, like give hope or make a wonderful tribute donation, that's a red light. That's invisible language. Yellow light is more like, okay, I can make this impact at a handful of organizations. I can provide food to people in need in my community at a couple different places near me. So it maybe isn't exclusive, but not every organization can make that claim. That's a yellow light. The nowhere else is leaning into your unique approach, your unique impact, maybe your unique community and focus and the people you're specifically helping. If no one else can make the claims that you're making, you are in the green zone here. So consider that when you look at the copy on your pages. Clarity, how well do I understand it? A red light is not at all. If you're using lots of jargon and insider terms and it's confusing language and run-on sentences and all that sort of stuff, that's a red light. If your donor walks away saying, like, okay, I think I get it, you're kind of in the yellow light zone. It's a bit harder to nail down exactly here, but I'll give you a rubric that might be helpful. And then if it's absolute, crystal clear, I know exactly what this copy means, then that's a green light. Credibility, last one here. If it's absolutely unbelievable, the claims that you're making, you're saying that, you can give $10 and you can go make an impact on, 50,000 people. That's really hard to believe. Even if it's true, it might be really hard to believe and you need to substantiate it more. It's somewhat believable, somewhat kind of in that middle ground, like, okay, I want to go with you. I want to trust you. Hard for me to really understand it, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. That's probably the yellow zone. Easy to believe would be, clear claims that you're making, substantiated either with testimonials or story or narrative or even other data points, things like that, that absolutely lean into boosting credibility intentionally, making it easy for someone to trust you and believe you. Let's look at an example, and I want your thoughts on it. This is the current homepage for an organization called Save the Children. I will say that this organization is doing a lot of A/B testing optimization all the time to try to optimize this specific page, as well as all their other fundraising channels. So they've done a lot of work on this value proposition. I use this example because it's a very simple page. It's kind of easy to understand the work that they're doing, but to show you that this sort of approach is not just about applying a score and definitively saying that this is better than that, but it's to give you these ideas of how might you improve these sort of different categories. So take a look at this page and think about the appeal. And I want you to jump in the chat and tell me what you think. Is it red, yellow, or green? I'll read the copy out loud for you. Donate today, save a life. Vulnerable children need you more than ever. Right now, children are growing up against the backdrop of hunger, conflict, and natural disasters. Your gift today can help make change that protects the lives of children, families, and their communities. $50 can provide enough food to keep 3 children from going hungry for a month. $150 can wrap 30 warm, cozy blankets around children affected by conflict. $300 can provide a month's worth of water to 20 children. What do you think? Jennifer says yellow. So does Tara. Nick is in the green camp. So is Kim. Any other thoughts? What do you think? I'll reserve mine for a moment. We've got a few yellows. We got a couple of greens. Probably not any reds. Does anyone want to say red? Anyone think this is like way off? And you've got to kind of put yourself in the shoes of maybe their ideal donor here, someone that really cares about children and advocating for the rights and needs of children. So I think we're between green and yellow, probably more leaning in yellow. Kathleen says, I'm not crazy about the colors used in the bottom box. Let's take that out of the appeal conversation. Let's zero in on what the copy says. We can talk about colors and things at some other point here too. I'm probably with you. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt here, because on a main donation page, when you're a large organization, you have lots of different people coming to the page, wide variety of motivations. It's really hard to get specific, because people might be coming for a wide variety of different reasons. And if you get too narrow or too specific, well, you might actually be helping some people choose to say yes, but also alienating others that expected to give to a different type of program. So you have to be a little bit generic. So it's hard to really lock in this appeal. But I do see the argument for yellow here, which is they really have one paragraph of copy talking about the need. They don't do a lot to unpack the problem. They talk about vulnerable children need you more than ever, but what's the scope? How many children are in need? That would maybe help with the appeal. Again, leaning into more narrative and that sort of stuff might help you understand the true impact, which might be a bit more inspiring for the appeal. So again, this is not to definitively say, here's what they should do to magically make this page better, but it's to start generating those ideas of how might you start to make the appeal stronger, because it might give you an idea to put to the test. What about exclusivity? Where else can I get this? What would you give it in terms of a red light, green light score for exclusivity? Can anyone else make these claims? Can you copy and paste this onto everyone else's website? That's really what a red would be, is if you could copy and paste this and put it anywhere else. That's really what a red would be. I see at least a yellow here from Caitlin. A yellow somewhere in the middle here, which is where I think this probably falls. There's lots of organizations that are doing work to advocate for kids locally, nationally, internationally. You might be able to copy and paste this and put it on other similar types of organizations, sites, and appeals, but it doesn't apply to every single organization. So maybe you're somewhere in the middle. They do start to get into those kind of unique gift handles, which helps a little bit on the exclusivity, but leaning more into what is their specific and unique approach. How is it different from other organizations advocating for children globally? That might help push it more to that green light zone. All right, clarity. How well do you understand it? Is it clear? Let me know what you think. I see Jennifer says green. Jennifer, I'm with you. I'm going to say green too. There's nothing about this that causes me to pause and have confusion. Now, maybe I'm left wanting a little bit more, but the word choice that they're using, the language they're using is very clear. It's easy to understand. I know what they're trying to communicate. So I'm pretty good on clarity there. Although, Kim, your point, not clear what children are being helped. That's where it might be lacking clarity, is more in the detail. Not about the word choice, but more in the detail. And so sometimes to increase clarity, we actually just need to write more, because you might be left with questions that are unanswered. And then credibility. Last one, how much do you believe it? How much do you trust it? And this is a hard one to answer on just a specific page, but is there anything they're doing on the page to try to boost credibility and trust intentionally? I see some greens, but and that's where credibility can be a little bit tricky, because if you're familiar with the brand, you might trust them. That's where brand marketing comes into play, to build that trust and credibility over time. But specifically on the page, there's not much that's being done to specifically increase trust and credibility. So I might even move it into the red zone, just to say there's lots that they could try and test to boost credibility, like a testimonial, some sort of narrative there. Are there other things to get a third party to say, hey, you can trust this organization? There might be things that they could try and test there. I don't not trust them because they're a very strong and known brand, but there's not a lot on the page that's actively trying to boost trust and credibility. Okay, I wanted to go into this sort of repeatable framework. I'm going to jump past it. We'll dive into this in a future session, but you'll get these slides and you can kind of look through this as well. But we'll dive into more of this. Okay, how do you start to build this out in an actual appeal? I want to pause and look at some tools on coloradogives.org, places where you should start to consider, how do I start implementing these 4 elements of a value proposition? The first one, and it's going to be your homework. We'll talk about the homework in specifics in just a minute here. When you go look at your coloradogives.org organization page, this is an example from WeCycle. We'll kind of scroll through it a little bit here. This copy here at the top, this is really their primary value proposition. I'm not here to go critique it at the moment, or we're not going to apply a score together as a group. That's kind of going to be the homework. But this is really the primary copy that I want you to zero in on when you think about your organization page. How do I make this copy not just about the mission and the mission statement and how long we've existed and all that sort of stuff, but lean into value proposition? How do you communicate the answer to that critical question right here on your organization page? Very simple to edit inside of the tool. You just have to put the time, the effort, and the thought into how do I craft my copy in an impactful and effective way. Down below, there's all sorts of other things, again, that you can include on this page, but I would encourage you to really zero this page in on that core value proposition. Why should I give to you rather than some other organization or even at all? You might also consider inside of your kind of dashboard and your tools here is when you go into fundraising tools, you have these fundraiser templates. If you're doing any specific campaigns or you're doing any sort of peer-to-peer giving, this is one that can easily get overlooked, I think, but you have a lot of options within these templates to go clarify the value proposition for those fundraisers. If you just leave it to them and leave it open-ended, they didn't just go through this training on value proposition and they're not sure, they don't know what those 4 key elements are to go craft the most effective narrative. Give it to them in this template. And so spend some time here crafting what really is the value of giving so you can make it easy for those fundraisers to go communicate with an effective value proposition. So that's a key place to kind of zero in on too. And then on your embedded pages, if you're using the embedded donation form, which I would highly, highly encourage you to do, really this copy here at the top is the place to zero in on. There's a lot we can talk about donation page optimization. Again, we'll get to that in a future session, but this is a place where you can start to use that same sort of scoring model to see how can I make it clearer? How do I boost credibility? Am I explaining our unique approach and differentiation enough? Is it motivating enough? Is there a strong enough appeal? So you can zero in on this copy on these kind of embedded pages as well. All right. We're right at time here, maybe just a bit over. We do have some homework, and I think it will be a little bit easier than last month. Last month was tricky, it was hard, and so many of you were able to actually go track down your data. You had good insights. That's so encouraging to see. I shared with our team afterwards, I was so encouraged to see how quickly people were pulling data, getting insights, and finding new things that they can focus on this Colorado Gives Day. Our homework for this month, there's 4 steps and none are too complicated. What I want you to do, scan this QR code, and we'll share the link in Slack as well, but scan this QR code and download the value proposition scoring rubric. I've designed this specifically for a donation page. We're going to apply it to the Colorado Gives organization page, your specific page on coloradogives.org. It shows the 4 key elements. It shows kind of the 0, 1, 2, 3 scoring. I want you to go, again, download this and kind of have it next to you, whether you print it out, you got it on your screen. You've got sort of a rough rubric to work with to score your pages with a few different things to consider and think about. So download that. And then secondly, what I want you to do, evaluate that Colorado Gives organization page, your specific page, and then you can go to this form. And I want you to tell us how you did. How did you score yourself? You can enter the URL of your page. You can score yourself 0, 1, 2, 3 for each of these 4 key elements. And then the very last question is really going to ask you, what's one thing you're going to do about it? Based on your scores, Even if you score yourself really high, you're going to find some places where, oh, this could be stronger, this could be better. I want you to tell us at the end of that form, what's one thing that you're going to change, that you're going to try, that you're going to test to improve the strength of your value proposition on that coloradogives.org organization page. And then you're welcome to share your takeaways in Slack too. I'm sure the whole group would benefit from seeing what you'd like to change and update. We will share these links directly in Slack. I see that question from you, Emily. You can obviously scan these QR codes, but we'll put them in the homework channel in Slack as well. Some other resources for you if you want to dive deeper. Again, you all should have access to the Next After Institute online courses. We have a course in there called Why Should I Give to You that dives way deeper into value proposition than what we've even covered here in this hour together. So I'd highly encourage you to check that out if this is really a key area for you to dive into. And that's really all I have for today. We have about 25 minutes left. If there's any questions or thoughts, and Jordan, feel free to jump in if there's specific things that you want to cover here as well. I will say, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for participation and all the comments and thoughts coming in. We'll post that homework in Slack with those specific links. And I hope you take advantage of it because I think there's some great things that can be done as you improve your value proposition to drive results. All right, I'll stop my screen share and we'll look at some questions. Jordan, any solid questions that have come in that we should spend some time on, you think?
Yeah, the one that is coming up today and comes up a lot is, should every email, regardless of the length or purpose, should it have a call to action to donate? So should it have an appeal in it?
Great question. And a very solid affirmative no. Not every email should have a donation link in it. It is always a temptation because we always want to drive more donations. And I think the argument for it that I usually hear is that, you know, we always want to give people the chance. If they're motivated today by something they just read, even in a newsletter email, we want to always give them the chance. The reality is what we actually see in the data, and I'll try to pull some of these for future sessions. We can look at them. Is that there's tremendous impact that can be made on the likelihood that someone is going to give just by purely sending them cultivation emails and cultivation communication. So there's a handful of experiments I could point to. One that comes to mind is an organization that they were actually having some deliverability issues with their emails because everything that we're sending is basically what you mentioned. Like it always had a donation appeal in it in some way, shape, or form. So anytime these donors and subscribers heard from the organization, they're asking for money. And they started to run into deliverability issues. What they actually tried was, okay, we're going to split our file in half. Half of them are going to get the same exact cadence of emails that they've been getting for years. The other half, we are changing nothing about those emails, except we're going to add one cultivation email every single Friday. And that cultivation email every single Friday was sent from a human being. It was plain text in style and design. It still had tracking and all that stuff, but it didn't have the big design things in it. And the only links were to go basically read an article or read a story or go check out more about this thing that they're talking about. It wasn't to ask for a gift or for a donation. It was just information about here's what's going on this week related to the cause. By the end of a 6-month period, they saw nearly like a 45% uptick in the likelihood that someone is going to give if they got those additional cultivation emails. They had no unique appeals in them. They had no additional appeals in them. It provided no like unique value proposition. It was just purely cultivation. And that led to a significantly greater likelihood that they would actually give. And it dramatically increased their deliverability rates, even though they're sending more and more frequently. So cultivation is huge. It's just really hard to measure the impact. But when you can measure it, you can see how much leaning into just that pure relationship side without any strings attached can actually increase the likelihood you're going to get a gift when you send the appeal later.
Awesome. Caitlin had a similar question, and Carrie also had a little bit of a follow-up to what you were saying. Let
me find it.
Sorry.
Here we go. We do a call to action in our newsletter that isn't a donation button. Join our social media. It's better to leave that out and just have the story part of the newsletter so that we aren't tiring our subscribers. The call to action isn't a donation button. I mean, Yeah, I could go either way on that. On the one hand, yeah, I just want pure cultivation. On the other hand, it's probably not harmful to include social media links in something like a newsletter. I would definitely not include them when you send an appeal. Those might be baked into your email template. I would make sure you get them out of there because you don't want to distract them with um, what is relatively an easier call to action. If you're putting donate next to follow us on, insert social media here. That's way easier to say yes to than actually parting with my money. So I would get it out of your donation appeal template. Probably not harmful to have in your newsletter, but also consider, and we'll talk about this more when we get specifically into emails, is oftentimes the more effective email template is that like humanized, more plain text style. So it might actually be really out of place and dehumanize the email if you have all those social media links in there every single time. Okay, let's see what else we got. Kathleen, are there advantages to cultivating in an email rather than an e-newsletter? Can you describe the difference? What do you mean is the difference between an email versus an e-newsletter? I'll let you put some thoughts there in the chat and we'll come back to it. Emily says, how are we ranked on Colorado Gives? How can we optimize SEO for our giving pages? Specifically 23 Habitat affiliates in Colorado. Jordan, do you have any thoughts on that side of it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a discussion we can have, Emily. Certainly, we're asking you as a first step to update your organization pages because they're ranking typically right below your website when people are searching on Google search. And so as far as affecting your rankability, there's certainly things you can adjust within the naming of your organization page, some settings, as well as that about section, which is the main portion of what we're asking you to update. The one other thing I'll just mention when you're updating your organization page is just remember that we have about a 50-50 split, and it's only increasing that more and more folks are donating on mobile devices versus desktop. And so you want everything to be streamlined and formatted and in a bold way that people in a couple sentences can really understand and take an action from your organization page on Colorado Gives to click that donate button. So Caitlin, we can definitely have additional conversations about how we can optimize your page specifically, but there's some tweaks you can make on the public facing content as well as in the settings area of your organization page to make sure that it's discoverable in multiple different ways.
If she's got more questions about that, is Slack the best way to ask those?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Emily, feel free to shoot Jordan a Slack if you've got further questions on how that is kind of structured from a search perspective.
Yes, Emily. Sorry, I called you Caitlin, but I didn't mean to.
That's okay. We got a lot of questions that are coming around. Okay. Sydney wants to get a little off topic, and we're here for it. We're having issues with the page that appears after someone donates via the embedded Colorado Gives donation form. Who's the best person to speak about this for help? Is that you, Jordan?
Yep, that would be me. Go ahead and shoot me a Slack and we'll go from there.
Cool. Jordan's got your back. Carrie, giving pages to review are different than our embeddable forms. The giving pages should have a lot more value propositions, ? Good question. I think I understand kind of where you're going with it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, the homework is to go look at that organization page on coloradogives.org. And I think that's a great place to start. And Jordan and I actually had a lot of conversation about this the other day of where should we really start first? And we thought that's the best place to start. For this reason, that if you start with this sort of like longer form, kind of larger scale page, it's intended and designed for you to go craft a value proposition for your organization at large. And if you start there first, it's going to give you basically the copy that you need to work from as you go create sort of derivative pages. Now, what you put there might actually be exactly what you would want to put on sort of your main primary donation page, even on your own website. But if you're going to go create a specific campaign, or you're running a new donor acquisition campaign or something, and it's going to give you sort of the framework and the guidelines and the copy to start from, and then sort of tease off and nuance different sort of aspects of your appeal or your value proposition for a specific context or campaign. So I think it's the best place to start to think kind of macro level about your organization. And then from there, you can tease it out and bring it down to sort of the more specific applications as you need to. Awesome. I see your gotcha. Thank you. Cool. Okay. There was still that question from Kathleen about e-newsletters versus email. I would love some more context on that, but I'm going to take my best shot at it. Without some additional context, because I think what you're probably referring to with like an e-newsletter is something that's actually hosted online. Sometimes you've got those more like magazine style things, which are kind of strange functionality in my opinion, but versus just sending something in an email. There are tremendous advantages to just sending something in an email rather than driving someone to one of those sort of portals to go view this more interactive e-newsletter. They can be kind of cool, okay, but at the same time, email is the primary channel that you have to drive conversions for your existing audience. It is the highest converting channel in all of your digital channels. If it's not, it should be, and there's lots of room to improve. And so we want to go steward and cultivate that email audience as much as we possibly can, delivering good value and good content, not just asking for donations all the time, but varying our emails so that people know that when they see you in the inbox, you're not just asking for money. You're actually investing in the human being and you're investing in the relationship with that donor. And if you can establish that level of trust, you are going to have so much better results when you actually get into a campaign and you do ask for money because they know you and they trust you and they understand what's happening with the organization. It's also important to keep in mind, if you send an email and you're telling people to go click the link and go to your e-newsletter, just do the math on your conversion rates of if you're sending, we'll keep the math simple. If you're sending to 10,000 people and you get a 20% open rate, you're only getting 2,000 people to open your email. And then if you only get a 10%, and that's high, 10% click rate, well, now you're only my math is, I'm going to test my math on the fly. So then 10% of 2,000 is what? 200. And so now you only get 200 clicks of people going to the e-newsletter to actually go interact with it. If you put it on the email, you'll get better visibility on it from all the people that open. And then it gives you a better chance to see who didn't see it yet. And you can also do a resend and say, hey, I noticed you missed this. I wanted to make sure that you saw it. And then you can resend, get more visibility on your cultivation content that way. So I would lean into moving it into the inbox rather than just trying to drive people to the site every single time. Always keep those links to send people to your website because there's a lot of reasons to do that, but make sure the email itself has tremendous value. Okay, let's see. Scrolling back down, a few more questions from Corey. I understand e-newsletter to be an email that includes several topic stories with links to different content, program update. Yeah, so we've touched on that. There's a wide variety of cultivation that you can use in the inbox specifically, whether it is this sort of long form, like digest style e-newsletter, or just sending one thing at a time. We've seen many tests where if you just sort of send one thing at a time, one story, one blog post, etc., you might actually get better traction, better click-throughs, and better engagement. But that's something you can definitely test. Let's see. Carrie says, can an email just be a feel-good story and a success story? Absolutely. Specifically, and we'll talk about this when we get to like your sort of email timeline for Colorado Gives Day and year-end season. Oftentimes, we like to build a handful of emails that are purely just that. Lean into the cultivation. Tell a story of someone who's been really impacted by the donor this year, they've been impacted by someone giving this year, giving that credit to the donor for making the impact, not just saying, look what we did. We made this awesome thing happen for this person and you gave, but no, shift the focus to be, you made this impact when you gave. Let me tell you a story about it. Those are fantastic emails. Don't put a donation ask in it, which makes it hard to measure the success. But if you're running any testing around it, you can actually go see the impact later on that can make on your donation appeals. But I'll show you some tests we have run as we get into it later on of the tremendous impact that those kind of cultivation emails can make. So please do that. Not just can you, but please do it. Susan, apologies, got to leave. Peace out, Susan. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you joining and spending some time. Thank you, Jennifer, as well. Hopefully this is helpful. Submit your homework. We'll post those links in the homework channel, and we'll be in touch in Slack throughout the coming month. A question from Abby, which is a very practical one and a great one. Is there a due date for the homework? I forgot to put that in here today. I got to remember that. Our next session is on September 24th. Is that correct, Jordan? Can you verify that? That's what I have jotted down. Is September 24th. Okay, so that is a Tuesday. Does that sound right? Now I'm questioning if they're all Wednesdays, but that's what I have down. We'll clarify that and make sure that date is exactly right. But that would mean that I would love for you to have your homework submitted by September 20th, which is that Friday before. So basically, you've got a full month to go do it. It's helpful if I can see it come in beforehand. So if there's things we want to talk about or review, I can kind of see some of that, give some feedback, and then we can craft our next session just around some of the needs or some of the learning. So let's aim for September 20th, and I'll put that in our notes in the Slack channel as well.
And the next webinar is September 25th.
That makes way more sense. I just put 24 on my slide that I have hidden over here. So I'll September 25th, everybody. Awesome. Okay, any other final questions? We've got about 6 minutes left in our official booked time here. If we need to end early, we can end early too. But if you got questions, I'm happy to stick around. So I'll give another moment here or two here. Copywriting starts sooner, asked Carrie.
Yeah, we can chat about that quickly. Yes, so there will be invites going out this week for the Copywriting 1.0 course as well as the 2.0 course. So just for context, there's only about 10 nonprofits in the 2.0 course. They were the folks that joined us from Level Up Year 1 and are doing some more intense workshops. Everybody else is going to be in the Copywriting 1.0 course. One person from your organization will be invited. It's likely the person who is your main contact participating in these different sessions. And if the wrong person is invited, you are working directly with Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, because only one person is sitting in on your copywriting course 1.0. And that's because that individual will be accredited. So they will get credits for participating and completing the Copywriting 1.0 course. If you have any additional questions, hit me up in Slack, but you should be seeing, if you have not already, invites from Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, and they will be inviting you for the 1.0 course, which is the majority of you, to Canvas to engage with that platform. And that's where you'll be learning and taking that course virtually at your own pace. For the 2.0 folks, you'll be invited to Zooms on the dates specified. Let's see.
Cool.
Oh, good. Tessa loved the 1.0 course.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. If there's any further questions, just as you kind of you think on and sort of review the material from today and work on your homework, I mean, feel free to shoot me a note in Slack. You can either put it you kind of in the general channel where others can see it, or if you want to have a one-to-one conversation, you can shoot me a note directly. Happy to try to stay in touch. I try to jump in there at least once a day and stay up with it. You know, if I miss a day or two, I'll definitely get back to you the following day. So send me a note if you got any further thoughts, questions. Again, we'll put links to the homework in the homework channel. Would love for you to submit that by September 20th. We'll stay in touch throughout the month, and then we'll see you all on September 25th. Wednesday for our next session.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk very soon.